President Biden taking his first major action on gun control, and he's causing controversy for what he said about the Second Amendment. Today, Biden rolled out a series of 6 executive orders to stop what the White House is calling a, quote, gun violence public health epidemic, end quote. And the president saying that's just the start of what he wants to do. Watch this.
Gun violence in this country is an epidemic, and it's an international embarrassment. Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about. But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. We should also ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country. We should also eliminate gun manufacturers from the immunity they receive from the Congress. They passed not a single new federal law to reduce gun violence. Enough prayers. Time for some action.
Biden also nominating a strong gun control advocate to head the ATF. But critics are saying that David Chipman's past comments are a problem. He appeared once to mock Americans who bought guns during the pandemic. Take a look.
They might think that they're diehard, ready to go, but unfortunately, they're more like Tiger King, and they're putting themselves and their families in danger. And so what I would suggest is for those people who were first-time gun owners, if they did go out and buy a gun, I would secure that gun locked and unloaded and hide it behind the cans of tuna and beef jerky that you've stored in a cabinet. And, only bring that out if the zombies start to appear. And I don't think they are.
Dana, I was just looking over some of the proposals. It strikes me that Biden's proposals seem pretty moderate, along the lines of what President Trump did after the Vegas shooting by, saying we needed to maybe rein in the use and sale of bump stocks. What do you think?
Well, it could be that, what he's proposing to do by executive order is actually fairly, maybe anodyne, right? So he talks about having a model red flag law that other states could pick up. It's not the executive orders that he's talking about that are causing the uproar today. It's that when he said there's actually no amendment is sacrosanct, I'm like, wow, even the first? Like, that would be really newsy. In addition to that, there's something else happened this morning. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia had an op-ed in the Washington Post in which he said, I will not vote to end the filibuster, end of story. What I think could have happened here on gun control is that Biden realized that he was not going to be able to propose legislation in Congress that would ever get anywhere. And then the left was going to constantly say, you're not doing enough, you're not doing enough. And so instead, what he's trying here is what Charles Cook of National Review just called an anemic end run around the Congress. My last point is that this is another example of President Biden's school of governing. So he will go out and give a speech on a very important topic and say, this is an existential threat. We've got to do something about it. And then he'll talk a really big game about bipartisanship and say, we really can work together. That's how I ran for president. I was in the Senate. I know how to do this to work with Republicans. My hand is outreached. But instead, what's happening is his hand is under the table and he flips it over and the Republicans are just left there saying, wait, I thought that we were going to work together on something, anything. And it turns out that they just might not.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. So, Greg, what strikes me is we have had a series of, big shootings, 8 in Georgia, 10 people dead in Colorado, more dead in California. But it looks like this has become a culture wars issue. To Dana's point, people just don't seem to be able to talk and get anything done. Why is this, the case that this is a culture wars issue when we're talking about life and death?
Because the Democrats cannot speak honestly about this. Biden used the phrase gun violence, public health epidemic. Those are 5 words when one word would do. That one word is criminals, right? Criminals. The overwhelming majority, 99.9999% of the crime is done by criminals. Or you could use 3 words like law and order. You could save a lot of time. The gun violence is directly related to the overall rise in crime due to the defund movement and the Ferguson effect. We've seen a dearth of a pullback in policing. We've seen even CNN admit that there is a drastic spike in crime, in shootings and homicides in all the major Democratic-led cities. So if you think attacks on pistols with stabilizing braces would have saved the lives of the extra 100 killed in Memphis this year, plus 100, you're crazy. If you think that turning lawful gun owners into felons would have prevented the deaths of the elderly Asians in Oakland, California, or New York City, some of whom were actually stabbed, you're nuts. If Joe really means what he means, what he should do is arrest his son, for lying on the ATF form 4473. You don't enforce that. You don't have the right to enforce anything else, frankly. And to Dana's point, it is anodyne. These are not real efforts. They're symbolic, and I'm okay with symbolic, right? But if you start focusing on the lawful owner while you brazenly ignore the crime that's going around in this country that is destroying this country, that's criminal.
Okay. So, Kennedy, one area where there seems to be some agreement, and this is one of Biden's proposals today, is that when you have these so-called ghost guns, guns that can be constructed from a kit, that they should have serial numbers on them. Do you think that might be something everybody can say, yeah, okay, let's do that?
No, I've shot a 3D printed gun, and there are going to be all sorts of ways that anyone with a CNC machine will get around federal regulations. And that's essentially what they're doing with this new category that has been constructed. And people who use the term don't really know what they're talking about, like when they use the term assault weapons. And I think it's really vague. I think it's nebulous. I think it's ill-defined. And I think it's something that's applied out of political convenience. My biggest issue here is with yet another bureaucrat who has never really spent time in the middle of the country. David Chipman, he's heading the ATF, and he obviously hates people who respect the Constitution and feel they need to have some form of self-defense in their homes because guess what? If you live in a rural area or if you live in a big city like Minneapolis or Portland, the police may not come when you call them. You may have a 911 emergency, and how long are you supposed to wait? 20 minutes? Do you tell someone who's broken into your home, who's threatening your life and your children's lives, hold on a second, let's wait till the cops get here? That's not necessarily how it works. And rational people in this country know that you can't always wait for the police. But what we know now is responsible gun owners are being lumped into this category where they're being made out to be murderous hillbillies, and it's very offensive.
So, Will, the House of Representatives passed 2 bills last week on guns and sent it on to the Senate. So far, no action. The president said today, you guys are always giving us thoughts and prayers, but you don't do anything. Is there anything Will would do?
Well, the will of the people does not support the House's bill nor Joe Biden's executive actions. Listen, Juan, the most important part of this story was Joe Biden's statement there at the beginning because it laid bare the Democratic playbook. If you can't win an argument, stop arguing, change the language. That's exactly what just happened. And you cannot win because in a year when violence is up, police funding is down, and gun ownership is at an all-time high, you won't win something democratically. You have to go through executive order. And make no mistake, the language is what's being changed. When Joe Biden said you have a public health epidemic, that is a very important phrase because in the past year we've sacrificed all manner of freedoms and rights at the altar of an epidemic. To classify gun violence as an epidemic allows him to take all types of authoritarian power to deal with gun control. What more, they learned from Georgia. Tell lies. As Dana or Kennedy pointed out, assault weapons is a made-up term that doesn't help define the lethality of a weapon and distinguish it from the vast majority of weapons everyone owns. Finally, Juan, the Constitution.